Okay, welcome to today's debate on the buyer. Today we're shining the light on Spain and looking at all the various trends and issues and opportunities that are from the Spanish wine country, particularly timed this week to tap into the Wines of Spain tastings that are taking place on February 28th in London and March the 13th, I think it is, in Leeds. So this is just to hopefully wet your whistle or wet your palate before those tastings. Yeah, so it's really a chance for us to explore with leading wine importers, wine merchants, and also we're joined by a leading Spanish Spanish winery to talk about what they're seeing from Spain and what it is they're looking to list, what's working, what's selling, and what particular regions and styles they're investing in now, but also what they think will be worth investing in the future as well. So I'm very pleased to welcome our panel. So not in any particular order, but very pleased to have Noel Young from NY Wines of Cambridge, or Noel Young Wines of Cambridge. Bastian Martinoli, who's the sales director of Fine Wines Direct UK, based in Cardiff. Gerard Barnes, who's the wine buyer at Bertman Wine Cellars. And Mike Best, Master of Wine, who's the wine product manager at Boutonneux. And then representing Spain, so you have quite a task on your hands. We have Carlos Moreno Lopez, who's the export manager for Familia Martinez Zabala in the Ribera. Is that right? You're in the Ribera del Duero?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all of us for joining. So yeah, what I thought I'd do is sorry, that's a good start, isn't it? I'm the one who ruins the "don't turn your phone off" gag. There you go. That couldn't be better timed. Yeah, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're keen to get your insights on what you think is working particularly well from Spain at the moment. So perhaps if we just go around the panel and get your initial thoughts. So perhaps Noel, can I come to you first? Is that all right? I mean, just in terms of, I guess obviously Spain is such an important wine country as a whole, but as for yourself and your business, where does Spain sit in the hierarchy, and what are you finding most interesting?
Well, Spain's always been a massive country for us, both in terms of volume and value of sales, and it's definitely a country that's massively on the increase. I'd say it's probably number 2 for us after France, and that's probably only really because a lot of the house wines are still French from a wholesale perspective. But I think outside of that, we probably Spain would be number 1. Regions wise, I've recently, in the last 3 years, bought a place in Valencia, so I'm there for about a third of the year. So understandably, I'm quite interested in the wines of that region. So there might be a slight skew in our portfolio. I think we've got way more Valencian wines than anybody else, but thankfully our consumers seem to really enjoy them. But I think across the board, we're finding sales going really well. People are looking for different things. So Galicia is a huge area for us, both obviously the whites, which have been very important for a long time, Albarino, and more recently Godello. But the reds in particular, Mencía is becoming very popular. People looking for lighter wines, different styles. So that's an area that's very easy to sell and easy to communicate. Obviously, the classics, Rioja, Ribera, are still strong and solid. And I think the fact that both those regions are making, again, fresher styles of wine, I think that's for me, the key is that Spain is not just making these big alcoholic wines that used to be very popular, and they still are to an extent. I mean, that market's not gone, but there's a bigger market for the lighter, crisper, fresher styles from both white and red, and Spain's doing that incredibly well. So I think it's an easy country for us to promote, and consumers are coming on board. Pricing is still relatively fair. They look good value compared to the rest of the world. I'm trying to get Priorat. Again, they're trying to make fresher. They're not so big alcoholic wines. That's an area that's increasing in popularity for us, as is Monsant, which is nearby. I'm trying to think of anywhere that's not we're selling lots of Chacoli, for example. So I mean, I think in general, we've been selling Spanish wine since I started, which was 32 years ago. It's always been a big thing, but I think probably right now it's just really hitting the sweet spot. I think from a quality point of view, but also a price and value perspective.
Excellent. I assume you bought property rather than a winery in Valencia.
At the moment, just a property. I'm in negotiations to buy some vineyard.
Okay, excellent. All right. And why that particular part of Spain then was that you?
It's just we're looking for somewhere to maybe have as a sort of a kind of part-time place to live, and we went there several times. Really enjoyed it. It ticked all the boxes. We've got a little place near the beach.
Okay.
It's also very close to the old town. It's very inexpensive, the property, which also helps. I'm a wine merchant after all, and it's cheap. Flights are really cheap from Stansted. I live 20 minutes from Stansted. I can usually fly there for £15 each way. Takes 2 hours. I used to have a business in Australia making wine. That's a little bit further away, and 1,500 quid to get there, or £2,000. So I sold my Australian business, and this kind of is my next venture is not just to live here, but also to try and make some wine as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, good luck with that. But that's very. We'll follow your Valencian story with interest then. So, Mike from Boutonnot, I mean, you're actually zooming in from Barcelona, aren't you? From Barcelona Wine Week.
That's right.
So I guess Spain is an important part of the Boutonnot category. I mean, do you want to talk us through picking up on what Noel was saying there? I mean, where
I'd love to
sit with you and what you're seeing from Spain.
So I think that we're putting a bit more focus on Spain as a company, because Brutto historically has been based on for the start of French negociant business, then the big connection with Italy with Araldica, and then South Africa where we have wineries. So we've always had Spanish wine, but it hasn't been perhaps as much of a focus as it's my job to make it, I think. And so there's a lot of opportunity in there. We tick some of the key boxes in terms of the key things that you need to have from a Spanish portfolio of Rioja, Cava, Albarino, Sherry, and it's time to look at what else is there and bring a sort of modern perspective to the portfolio, really. So I see this big change of style. I think that it must be very, very difficult for wineries to work out what style of wine they should make and who it's appropriate for. Because sometimes, to pick up on what Noel was saying, I try some of these big beefy wines and you think it's not really what we had in mind. But that is also a very popular style of wine, and not just in England we might be moving slightly towards more fresher styles, but around the world maybe that's not the style people are looking for. So, but there's lots to choose from. I mean, I'm in a wine fair with 850 wineries are here, so there's got to be something which is in that room which no one in the UK has discovered yet, which is great value, tastes brilliant, looks really good, nice people to work with. I know that that's in there, so I'm just excited to go and find them, really.
And I guess that's the thing about a country like Spain. It has so many different wine regions and so many layers, and on the one hand you might think you pick out the obvious areas, but then when you sort of start digging into it, there's just so much choice and so much diversity.
Absolutely. And Noel, living near Valencia, we have taken on a winery which actually Noel got to before us, but he's let us sort of passed it on to us. There's a winery called Can Leandro, who made a small winery in Valencia Dio, making lovely style of wine from varieties that Merceguera and Bonicare, and these varieties that are not particularly popular or fashionable, but they've started to make this style of wine which is really appropriate, and they're well priced, and things like this can definitely have a place where people are looking for something different.
Excellent. Okay, Gerard, can I come to you at Bertman? What I mean, picking up on what the guys have said so far, I mean, where does Spain sit with you, and what are you seeing as a
historically with Bertman, Spain hasn't been our number one focus, but in recent years, particularly we about 2 years ago took on Vega Sicilia, so one of the flagships of Spain, which brought a lot more focus to the range, although we had been working on developing our Spanish range for some time before that. I've got to agree with what Noel and Mike have already said before. I think one of the real beauties of Spain is the sheer variety these days that is available. And I think to a certain extent has always been available. It's just not necessarily that the UK market has been looking for it. What is really interesting from my point of view, buying mainly for the on-trade for Berkman, we're principally, but not exclusively, but mainly an on-trade supplier. So that freshness, drinkability, lightness, ideally you want something that people will go back to and drink more than one glass. You want repeat, not only repeat purchase, but you want to be that drinkability that goes with food. And I think Spain, if you're as old as I, haven't been in the business long enough. I remember when I was first starting, late 80s, early 90s with Oddbins, and Spain was talked about then as the old style of Rioja was light and very, the kind of Parker influenced, really rich extracted wines that dominated the late 80s, 90s, 80s weren't really a thing that was around at the time. And what's really interesting now is that spread of style, both right across the country, but even within different regions. Rioja, Ribera del Duero, they're no longer all making monolithic chunky reds. You can buy those and there are great examples of them throughout, but at the same time, we've been looking for things that are maybe a little lighter, fresher. Berkman has something of a reputation for being Pinot Noir specialists, and we've put on tastings in the past for red wines, Pinot and fellow travelers that we've called pale and interesting. And what is really interesting about Spain, I find these days, is that those wines are absolutely available if you want to look for them, and you can find them whether it's Monastrell in Jumilla, going up to Priorat where you can find Garnacha that actually is very Pinot influenced, all across the north, Aragon, Tempranillo in both Ribera del Duero. I have to say, I mean, hats off to Tim Atkin for his top 100 Ribera tasting. I remember going to one or two pre-COVID where the wines were a little bit monolithic, samey, chunky. His most recent two tastings have brought up examples that are sort of really juicy, racy, not quite transparent. You'll never get that with Ribera, but real styles that are reflecting individuality, different winemaking, winemaker's personality, and also a bit of terroir. You know, bringing a French word into it, you know, there is a bit more regionality even coming in within the regions. You get that in some of the white wines. You're starting to find that in Galicia now, even with Albarino, you're getting different styles of Albarino appearing. So I think Spain, and that's without even mentioning the varieties that are being rediscovered or promoted that hitherto either went into unknown, unnamed red or white blends, or were the junior partners of things. So I think Spain has never in my career in wine been as exciting as it is at the moment. There is more quality, better quality than I've ever seen and tasted. And I agree with Noel. I think the pricing is still very fair, actually, for the quality that is available. So exciting times for Spain.
Excellent, thank you. Really, really good summary. And I suppose also the UK, I mean, all three of you have spoken already. You know, the level of knowledge and experience and commitment to actually go and explore and actually really dig into Spain as well. I mean, that's an important thing, isn't it, for your agencies, all your businesses, the fact that you actually have that commitment to really pick up on what's going on in Spain as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those self-reinforcing things. If you have a market that's interested and interesting, some of the things don't take off quite as quickly or as well as we would hope. I'm sure we've all gone and found wines and come back thinking this is an absolute knockout. You know, people are going to go crazy over this thing, and then it doesn't happen in the way you imagine. But at the same time, there is enough niche demand for some of the more interesting things, as well as mainstream demand for all kinds of Rioja, Ribera, and you know, other things. So the UK market is one that is receptive to good new things.
Excellent. Bastian, I mean, you're with Fine Wines Direct. Obviously, you're very on trade focused.
Yes.
Primarily in Wales, but obviously outside of Wales as well. I mean, is that a similar kind of story that you're finding from the demand from the on-trade, for your on-trade customers for Spain?
Yeah, I think I can relate to everything that the panel said for the moment. I think, you know, the classic styles of Spain are still very, very popular in the on-trade. And, you know, that fresher, leaner style of wine is becoming more and more popular. I think us as a company, we you know, we started very traditional in terms of our range, which was, you know, mostly focused on Rioja and Cava. But, you know, in the recent years, and to an extent since COVID, actually, we are now buying and selling more wines from, you know, Galicia has become a very important region for us. You know, I can tell you about 10 years ago, we had 1 Albarino, and now we got 7. And we sell as much as, you know, of each, you know, and like Gerard mentioned, you know, the style of the Albarinos as well, you know, the more coastal style, fresher, more inland. So I think, you know, customer is becoming more and more discerning. Galicia as well, very interesting with lighter reds, you know, the Mencia, particularly, you know, fantastic wines from Ribera Sacra. I find, you know, personally, some of my favorite wine coming out of Spain at the moment, the wines from Ribera Sacra, and I find that, you know, the vineyards are so unique, the way they cultivate their vines, and you know, with these little elevators going up and down, you know, pretty special. And you know, you get that sense of terroir there, that sense of, you know, provenance. Yeah, I mean, looking further afield, you know, I think as the on-trade focus, you know, we need to look at, you know, price is very important, and Spain delivers that. You know, we cover from entry level to super premium. The entry level, you know, wines from La Mancha are still important for us as a house wine. You know, restaurants, hotel will use your straight Tempranillo, Verdejo as a, you know, as a you know, entry level wine, and still to this day, you know, compete with, you know, Languedoc or even Chile, and delivers really good wine. But we've seen a big surge as well in Verdejo from Rueda, which is one of these wines which is perfect for restaurants because it's frank, it's flavorsome, it's you know, easy to understand, and it's also well priced. And I think the you know, Spain as a whole, I mean, you know, I might obviously, we more focus on Spain because they represent a big part of our portfolio, but I do feel like Spain and Spanish DOs are doing lots of efforts to promote their regions as well. You know, like Rioja Wine Month, or, you know, Albarino Day, and, you know, really trying to, you know, lift these wines with marketing campaigns, and I think that works, you know. Like Rueda, for example, has got 2 new ambassadors in the UK now, one being very close to us, actually, based in Cardiff. So, you know, it's great. It's great overall for Spain. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Well, Carlos, sorry to keep you waiting, but I just wanted to get the viewpoint from the UK jury, as it were, so that obviously it helps you potentially hear from what importers in the UK are looking for. I mean, does that kind of reflect what's happening in Spain, do you think, or what the impression that Spain has in terms of what's happening in their own country in terms of this changing styles and fresher styles and
So what do you want me to say? Because all of you have explained perfectly what I was going to talk about. First of all, no, I totally agree with you. I know a lot of people in the wine business from Europe that they have some house in Valencia because or in the Mediterranean coast because it's a perfect place to establish. And well, from my side, I am from Barcelona, from Alella, which is a small DO based on white wines.
Yeah.
A lot of part of my family is from Galicia, but very close to El Bierzo. So I'm a true passionate about Albarino, Mencía, and Godello. Godello for me, well, is one of the best white grapes in Spain. And of course, working in Ribera del Duero, I'm living since I was 9 in Rioja. I'm passionate about Rioja and Ribera del Duero. But also I feel that in the last years, Garnacha, Monastrell, and Mencía are the rising grapes in people that are developing in the UK. We gotta have in mind that Rioja is the most important market. It's 34% of all the wines that are exported in Rioja go to the UK. So it's a primary market. But I totally agree with you that, let's say 20, 30 years ago, everything was Rioja, and it was a little bit more old style Riojas. More oaky style, more meaty wines. But in the last, I would say the last 15 years, wineries in Spain understood that we needed to change a little bit the trend onto more easy drinkable wines, more fruit-driven wines, more modern profile wines. And for example, in our winery in Ribera del Duero, in Bodegas Portia, which I represent, we have these two styles of wines. We have the easy drinkable fruit-driven wines. But then when we go on to the top wines, single parcel, terroir style wines, we go on to a little bit more structures that for the on-trade, for the on-trade go pair really well. And in my case, Familia Martinez Zavala, which is the group that I represent, I'm focused on Bodegas Portia, but we have 6 wineries. So three of them are in Rioja. It's Faustino, which of course all of you surely know about, Campillo and Marqués de Vitoria. Then we have a winery in Navarra, another one in La Mancha, and another one in Ribera del Duero. So we represent quite the top 4 or 5 DOs in Spain. So the trend that I see is that, of course, Rioja is, for us, it's the key, and also Mancha, it's very important. But I've seen that in the last years, the effort that the wineries have been making in terms of improving the quality of wines, sourcing better vineyards, having looking for terroir wines, looking for a little bit more modern and more complex style. It represents in the on-trade. It's also, we see that the consumers are trying just not to focus only in Rioja, but trying to see different DOs in Spain, because of course we always talk about Rioja, Ribera, Rueda, or Rías Baixas, but we have more than 70 DOs in Spain.
And can I ask you, in terms of the Spanish domestic market, is there a similar demand from consumers for the fresher styles, all the things that the UK panel have said that we're interested in? Is that something that's also reflected in the Spanish market, or are you having to make wines? As you mentioned there, they're almost making 2 styles of wine, or is it also?
No, it's the same. It happens exactly the same. Of course, Rioja all over Spain, and Ribera. It started Ribera in the north, but now Madrid is one of the best places to find a big portfolio of Ribera, and also in the south. But nowadays we do not make different profiles. Nowadays we feel that young people that are trying to look more onto fresh and fruit-driven wines. Of course, all the style wines, they are still very important for us. Basically, more for Rioja than Ribera, but it's still very important. All the style wines, but you see now that if we talk about Rioja, we see now that all the crianzas are totally modern style, and reservas, which in the past were more oaky, more classic, now are going a little bit more onto fruit.
Okay. And can I just go back to the UK panel? I mean, in terms of the interest in some of the perhaps non-classic Spanish wines. I mean, you mentioned some of the, particularly the white grape varieties, you know, in recent years, you know, Verdejos and the Godellos, which say 5 or 6 years ago were quite, you know, not something unheard of, but they've now become a real part of the market. Is there more demand on you as buyers to be forever looking to push the envelope and explore more and actually find what is the next Verdejo? Is it almost like trying to keep up with the demand of interest in Spain? I mean, Mike, when you're in Barcelona this week, are you looking to sort of tick the boxes that you've already got, or are you looking to really try and push the envelope and experiment in new areas?
For that question specifically, I think that, I mean, we've all sort of said lots of nice things about Spain. It's all been a bit sort of, you know, very positive, but actually there's quite a lot of things that are wrong that they can improve on and that should change. And one of the things that I don't think they do particularly well is the marketing. They don't do it very well as a collective. So I think that if you were in charge of Spanish wine overall, and you see what's happened in Rías Baixas, it's a small place, it's only 4,000 hectares, and the price of grapes basically doubled from one year to the next. And what that means is that the viability of Albariño by the glass is really difficult now, or certainly it will be as the 2022 prices come through into the market. So what does that mean? Well, people are going to look for Rueda, for Verdejos, for White Riojas, for Gadea, for other white wines from around Spain, so that they can present alternatives that are good value, but try and do that in a better, more joined up way. I think that represents an opportunity. If it goes really badly, they'll just lose those Albariño listings to people buying other wines from other parts of the world. If it goes really well, then people will recognize that yes, Albariño is never going to be that price anymore, but there are other options which are really worth looking at.
And is that price increase down to the short harvest, or is it down to?
Because there's only 4,000 hectares, and there's nowhere else really to go. And if a number of big companies moved in and bought grapes at basically any price, they did have a slightly smaller harvest, but it was mainly the fact that the big companies came along with a checkbook and wanted to buy into the market because it's a premium product, and it can command that really high average price, much higher than the rest of Spain, where average price is really low. And so I think that's probably here to stay.
And also, I think what happened was during COVID, what was really interesting during the first COVID lockdown, because most Albariño was sold to the on-trade, apart from supermarkets in the UK, suddenly the bodegas income was cut off, so they had to pivot and sold to the Spanish domestic market, to retail and online outlets. And suddenly, when everything was opened up again, they almost had twice the market that they had to start with, as Mike points out, only 4,000 hectares of vines. And suddenly you bring that, and then two players particularly start buying up grapes for their brands, and you have chaos on price in the area. And it will be interesting to see whether Albariño can remain a mass market grocery item, as well as something that is important in the on-trade. The short-term solution would be, well, it can't be a short-term solution, would be planting vines, but how much space there is and how much good vineyard land there is for the quality that they would want to maintain, I don't know.
It's probably why we're seeing so much Albarino being planted in the New World then.
Even in France, I mean, it's a good grape variety. You're starting to see it in Languedoc a little bit these days.
Yeah. I mean, just picking up on the more on anybody else have a view on that? I mean, is that something which
I was going to add as well. I think the Albarino, we've seen the price increase coming through, and like Mike said, I think, I mean, for us here, we are just at the limit of being able to serve for our customer to serve these wines by the glass. But if it continues that way, it will just become this new sort of, premium white that sits on the top of a wine list and just doesn't move because it's just, handicapped by its price. But again, even Godello is the same scenario. This year the demand of Godello has increased, the price has gone up, and there's little to no wine available. So they are leading the the sort of premium white wine category in Spain, but it's, if you can get it.
Yeah. Noel, is that something that you picked up on as well?
I think we're sort of slightly dismissing the role of the independent wine trade and the mail order specialists, that during COVID, an awful lot of that surplus was actually sold by people such as ourselves and other online specialists, and therefore that's also growing the market because we've seen increased demand. We've shown these wines to people, and so more people are now aware of these wines. So I think the whole thing becomes a bit of a problem. But I also think it's slightly lazy to just blame everything on price and think that that's the end of the day. I mean, I think it's we need to educate our public, need to educate our customers a lot more. And Albarino doesn't need to be a low-priced item on a wine list. Also, not the on-trade isn't all just about huge margins like it is in London, which therefore I imagine will make Albarino hard to beat by the glass. But for a lot of people selling wine on lists around the UK who work off slightly lower margins, it's still quite an easy sell. It still fits that wine by the glass category. In my opinion, no problem at all. We'll have to see how it goes in the next 12 months. To go on to your further point about pressure on other varieties, I think we're leading the trade. We're leading the demand. I don't think it's a consumer way. I think it's more merchants, importers, journalists, what have you. I think we're all finding exciting and new things, and therefore we want to push those to the public. And I think the public are becoming more knowledgeable. They're more open to tasting new wines, different things. I think the pandemic for us was a great thing because it meant, for us in terms of wine, obviously not from a personal point of view and the horrible side effects of that, but in terms of just purely looking at it from a wine perspective, it's opened so many of our customers' eyes to trying new things. People weren't able to go out, people couldn't go on holiday, people couldn't travel, therefore they started trading up. They started, well, I know I always buy Pinot Grigio and I always buy Rioja, but maybe I'll try something else.
Is it me or is it anybody else?
No, it's Noel. I think he's cut off in mid-flow.
Cut off in mid-flow. He was doing so well as well. But perhaps if Noel, if you can hear it, perhaps if you want to go out and come back in again, it might help with your recording. All right, there you go.
Hello, you're back on.
You were cut off in your own, voiced by your own petard, Chief.
That's not the first time.
No, you were just talking about the fact that in lockdown there was a lot more experimentation going on and discovery, and you feel that in a way is still got a long way to go for Spain.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, I think it's very much something that we can lead as merchants, and therefore, if Albarino becomes a slight issue because of demand, price, what have you, there's a gazillion other things that we can move people towards. And my point is, I think people are very open to that. Looking at Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc and the disaster of that, it was no problem at all for me to push people to try a Chilean alternative, a French alternative, a South African alternative, whatever. People weren't. We might think they're really wedded to this, but I don't think we are. I think sometimes wine merchants are a little bit lazy and think, oh, this means we're going to have to work a bit harder. But actually, the end result of that is you're opening your markets to a greater range of wines. So I don't really see the Albariño thing being a problem at all. As I say, there's lots of other, as Carlos and Bastian and everyone has said, there's so many 70 DOs, so many different grape varieties still to be discovered in the UK.
Yeah, and I suppose the way Albariño arguably was potentially one of the first of the more, I don't know, left field or less well-known Spanish white grape varieties to really make its mark in the UK, which I suppose the way that as a trailblazer, it's allowed lots of the other styles to come through, which I guess is, as I say, it's become arguably a victim of its own success to some extent. But in terms of like, looking at other areas, then I mean, can we pick out sort of grape varieties that perhaps aren't as well known now, that perhaps in 2-3 years' time will become the Verdecos of the future, or is that too much of a journalistic key, trying to be too easy?
A few years ago, I would have said Godello, but it's never really taken off the way I imagined it might. I remember I was working for a company. We got Godello into the Sainsbury's Taste the Difference range to sit alongside their very successful Albariño, and they pulled it after 2 years. It just didn't make the numbers, which was a great shame. So I think there will always be a degree of experimentation. Verdeco equally, I wouldn't be clearly as a tipster, I wouldn't be somebody you'd rely on, because 15 years ago I thought that was going to be the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc equivalent from Southern Europe, and even though it's gradually edging towards mass market acceptance, it's never really taken off in the way that I thought it might. So I think a lot of these products, we have a Panza Blanca from Ayala, Albio, the Rufete Blanca, there's some great wines, but I think they're going to be niche. And equally, I don't think we should necessarily want any different to that. I think maybe niche plus might be a good option, partly because a lot of these things aren't actually planted in huge volumes. So you can find things, but will they become mass market? Not really, because there isn't enough land planted, there aren't enough growers making that style. So I think an interesting kind of patchwork tapestry, if you like, mangling metaphors horribly, of different styles and grapes would probably be a sign of a successful Spanish market in the UK in a few years' time. If these grapes and regions can find acceptance and good business here that is sustainable, then you aren't necessarily, people or the regions don't all have to become the next Rioja, the next sort of juggernaut powerhouse in order to be successful or to be seen as successful.
Yeah, because Carlos, I know that within where you are, I mean, just taking a grape variety like Tempranillo, your Tempranillos that you're making are potentially different from a Tempranillo from a so even within a grape variety as well known as that, there's still lots of complexity and divergence and things for us to explore and better understand more.
Yeah, of course. We have Tempranillo. It's in Bodegas Portia, which is called here in Ribera. It's Tinto Fino, and as it's the same grape variety than the classic Tempranillo in Rioja, in Mancha, there's a big difference, because we need to have in mind that in Ribera del Duero, the wineries and the vineyards are located between 800 and 900 meters. And if we compare it with Rioja, in Rioja, we're talking about 350 up to 600 meters. So we see that there's a big difference in terms of climate, because we are more influenced by Atlantic and continental climate. So it's harsh and hard winters. We can get a gap of almost 50 degrees between summer and winter. We can get minus well, last year we got minus 15 degrees in our vineyards, and in summer we got 45. So that's some things that makes the Tempranillos totally different, because when we talk about Rioja, it's more, well, let's talk about in general terms. It's more onto red fruits, more acidity, a little bit more rounded. But if we go to Ribera del Duero, it goes more onto black fruit, more ripe, more alcoholic, more tannins, and much more structure. So more, let's say, more meaty wines. So that's and less acidity, of course, because in terms of acidity, Rioja, let's say, it's the king in Spain. So that's two totally different Tempranillos, and we're talking about 2 hours by car difference. So from Rioja to Ribera, it's 2 hours by car, and we see that that there are 2 totally different grapes. So that's something that usually when we talk about Tempranillo, when we think about Verdejo, Tempranillo, Garnacha, we think about a stereotype or prototype that we have tasted, but it's totally different.
Yeah. Any thoughts from the panel there? I mean, in terms of, like, you know, we're always looking for the next new thing and the next shiny toy to play with. But I mean, do you think actually there's still a lot to be done with arguably the more traditional areas of Spain, the more familiar, but actually do people really understand you know, a grape variety like Tempranillo?
Yeah, I mean that is that change is happening, and so Ribera del Duero is able to build on success of you know, of Rioja, and of looking for full-bodied, powerful, you know, good quality wines, which is great. But also within the regions, that things are changing. I mean, in Rioja, they've got the new Viñedos Singulares categories, which are, and this focus on the vineyard, and people in some cases, well, leaving DOs because they feel that their rules are too restrictive, but still making great wines. Then that has a bit of a problem. I think that the focus on old vines is starting to come through in Spain, like it has in other countries, and probably more successfully with more PR and marketing. But they've got a lot of good quality old vines, and are probably not quite making as much of it in the story and the marketing as perhaps they should do. So yeah, those are the things that I think will happen. There's definitely still layers and layers to work on with established regions too.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
The other thing, to echo everything Mike said there, but the one really interesting thing for me in the last couple of years has been the return of Garnacha in Spain. When you think, and again, this echoes, or it chimes nicely with that move in the UK for lighter, fresher wines. It's amazing that Grenache, you know, you think of something that can be monolithic, that makes Chateauneuf de Pape in sort of huge, chunky styles, or can do. But at the same time, there has been a real movement in Spain. We have a few wines from different regions, Garnaches. You've seen it go back to Rioja. Priorat is making more single, or rather Garnacha dominating the blend, or being the single variety. But the return of places like Gredos, when you think of the things coming out of just an hour away from Madrid, it could be like going back 50 years when you actually, you know, drive out there to Avia and Sobreros. You've got these abandoned, or pretty much abandoned vineyards with these amazing old vines on a real altitude. I mean, you're talking, you know, 700 to 1100 meters, things like that. So suddenly my buying director, Alex Hunt, who's always good for summing up things in a pithy quote, he says the best value Pinot Noir in Europe at the moment is Garnacha coming out of Spain. And, you know, he's right. You've got these amazing, really hugely flavoursome, concentrated in terms of flavor, and yet at the same time borderline transparent, light, fluid Pinot style garnachas. We do a couple from a producer, Soto Manrique, that at different vineyard levels and different degrees of granite in the soil, you can have several different, very different wines from 2 kilometers apart on the same mountain. It is getting to be very Burgundian in terms of its terroir-driven differences of style, all of which make really good value quality wines. So that for me is almost as a Pinot fan, and I found it more and more difficult to afford the things that I like. Finding Garnacha from Spain, where you can get for anywhere from Cariñena, where it's brilliant house wine, entry point, value for money, just simple fruit pricing, right up to top wines from Rioja, Priorat, and other parts of Aragon, and then into Gredos. I think it's one of the most exciting stories out of Spain at the moment.
That's a great. That would be a great tasting in itself, wouldn't it? Really, sort of having as you say, mentioned, like the top 100 Riberas, the top 100 Garnachas, or whatever.
That'd be staggering. And they're some of the oldest vines as well. The ones that have been lucky enough not to be ripped up in the dash to Tempranillo in different parts of the country. That's where the flight from to the country to the cities for economic reasons over the last 50 years bizarrely has helped. A lot of these, vines that were grapes taken to the various co-ops and so on were almost abandoned. And now you've got a whole generation of young winemakers going out and rediscovering them.
Must have come that old vine story there as well, I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, the old vine area is one sort of a global phenomenon, as it were, not phenomenon, a global opportunity. But I mean, we're hearing a lot about sustainability and the demand for organics or the need for sustainability. I mean, is this something that Spain can also hang its hat on? Or, I mean, yes. Mike, when you're out in Barcelona now, are you expecting to see a lot of sustainable organic wines?
I've been here since last Sunday. So I flew into Alicante, made my way up, and seeing, I guess I saw a lot of vineyards. People wanted to show me which were these dry grown bush vine, old vines. And it's pretty easy to be organic when it only rains 300 millimeters. It's a bit harder in Rías Baixas. So that's important. There's non-stop sunshine in the southeast of Spain. So everyone's got the solar panels and the wind turbines up there. So yeah, they're working as hard in the same way as other sensible wine producers around the world to work out how they reduce their carbon footprint, and they what they do in terms of water and so on. And lots of the vineyards don't even have access to water. It will be impossible to irrigate them. So it's something that people are really keenly aware of, working towards certifications. And so I think it's a bigger thing here as it is anywhere. What I would say is difficult is that's probably your medium producer and up from there. There's still an awful lot of wine sold for cents a litre, and there's a lot of wine sold in bulk. There's massive wine factories which are put out a huge amount of wine, and Spain has the cheapest prices in Europe for bulk wine. They send lots of bulk wine off around the world, bottled in various different markets. That I don't think is necessarily quite a sexier story. It's not something you can put on the front of a magazine, but ultimately has a big impact. And so there's a requirement to get that part of the market right as well, to bring the entry-level cooperatives, the sort of entry-level big producers are on board with that as well. But they're not going to do that when they're losing money and it's their lives difficult. So that's the sort of where some of the marketing job needs to come in, and some of that benefit of working towards premiumization, I think.
Yeah, the whole bulk angle actually for Spain is, clearly it's the largest exporting country in the world, and clearly a lot of it is in bulk. And I suppose you know, as you say, getting the bulk market working as efficiently and as professionally as it can is going to be, you know. Can I ask you, Carlos? I mean, in terms of internal conversations in Spain, is organics and sustainability up near the top of the agenda, or, as Mike says, depending on local circumstances and economic
Totally agree with Mike. It's depending on the DO, on the region, on what trend does the wineries do want to follow. For example, in our case, in Ribera del Duero, we have no certification, organic, but we since the beginning, since the construction of the winery, we always committed to sustainability. Even in the design of the winery, we are in a hill, so we have the bottle and barrel rack partially on the ground, so we do not need to use air conditioning. We have all the natural light possible with some glasses just in the bottling. We, of course, try always to harvest at night to avoid to cool the grapes. We harvest, so we bring the grapes on the top of the winery. So we use the gravity in the first moments of the production, just to avoid the use of pumping machines. But I think that the discussion about organic, it was a little bit more like around 10 years ago. Nowadays, all the wineries, I think that internally have adapted all the systems to try to be more sustainable in the vineyards, with trying to reduce to rationalize the water, because as Mike says, for example, in Ribera del Duero, it doesn't rain very often, so we have around 300 milliliters per square per cubic meter per year. So it's really low. And what we need to do is to try to optimize the water. And for example, in our case, we have some humidity sensors, and we use aerial satellite photos to see the state of the humidity state of the vineyards, to see if we need to bring more water to irrigate. So I think that the wineries nowadays would try more is to be more efficient, more than trying to be organic or biodynamic.
Yeah. Okay. And can I ask Bastian, Noel? I mean, is that something which do you put a lot of focus on listing sustainable organic wines? Is that something which your customers are calling for?
Yeah, I think for us the sustainability angle is as important as it can be now. So we supply some bigger outlets which have very strict demand in terms of understanding the carbon footprint of each bottle of wine. So it's a lot of time and effort internally, and investment as well, to even just audit ourselves and understand how much carbon we're emitting. And I think is working with the right partner in Spain, which then can give you all that data, and making sure that they are as well on the on that trajectory. We working with Marqués de Cáceres, for example, in Rioja, which is one of the most famous brand in Spain, and they've got a department which is focused now since this year on really understanding the carbon footprint per bottle. Mm-hmm. So we can then communicate back to our customer and understanding, like making sure the glass is light, making sure that the cardboard is recycled, in short circuits and all these bits, and I think, this is very difficult when we talk about, small producers in smaller regions, not all some of these producers don't have the resources to do all that job. And, I think, hopefully these big companies in Spain will lead the way and pave the way for other companies then that can follow and, follow their lead. But I think it's it's very more than ever now, and we need to do it. We need to understand, because I feel like you hear a lot in the trade, having the great wine that tastes great, but actually, if the wine is bad for the environment, maybe your ethics should tell you like you shouldn't buy it in the first place. So I think that's where we're at now.
Noel, is that something when you're looking at importing from Spain? Well, I guess from any country. I mean, do you have, or are you, or having to make that a more important part of your buying decision?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I'm interested in quality and flavour and taste, and I think 95% of my customers are the same. The happy side of that is that usually wines that are good quality and taste good, they're usually being made in an environmentally friendly way. Most good wineries are going down the organics route or using biodynamics. I find that's kind of a happy, not so much a coincidence, but the two seem to go hand in hand. But if I'm being totally honest, the vast majority of our customers, that we have a few, but the vast majority don't actually ask. They want to know how the wine tastes. I'm not saying I'm not dismissing it at all. To me, if I can do both, then brilliant. If it ticks all the boxes, if I can tell people it's sustainable, it's organic and everything else, and low sulfur, brilliant. And as I say, I would say 95% of the wines that we buy probably are that anyway. But I'm firstly motivated by quality.
Okay, fine. Just a word about time. One area that we haven't really looked at all actually is the world of sparkling, and obviously Spain has its fair share of sparkling wines. Is that? I mean, people keep talking about the resurgence of Cava. If that actually is happening on the ground, or other sparklings are available. I mean, as a category, is sparkling from Spain something which can be done? Is something to get excited about as well in terms of the opportunity and the variety?
Well, I'd say, well, we're giving it a go. I've listed 2 new Cavas this year, so I think that there's a lot there to discover and enjoy and everything from. I mean, now it's cheaper than Prosecco though, at the real entry level as well. So that's a problem in some ways, but also in terms of the consumer, if you're getting a great glass of wine, really. I haven't actually tasted, even though I've tried a lot of cheap Cava in the last 6 months. I haven't really tasted any of the old kind of rubbery style, which they taste more like Prosecco now, sort of soft, fruity, and with kind of gentle bubbles and a bit sweet. And I thought, it's kind of interesting that had changed. Then I guess in a more exciting way, some of the Reserva Cavas and Grand Reserva Cavas are still really fantastic value for money, even though you could get something, under £20 is doable. 15 to £20, you can find something really exciting there. And then with champagne prices creeping up, then I think that hopefully that means that people actually will try different sparkling wines, and we're quite useful. Quite the good things in England is that people can be more open to trying English sparkling wine, and because they try English sparkling wine, and they are also open to trying sparkling wine that's not champagne, that's not just cheap. So I think that's really for me, that there are lots of problems with the Cava Dio, the people leaving the appellation, corping out. How does that fit in with the premium producers of Cava? There's a lot to unpack there. If I was a ambitious sparkling wine Cava producer, then I think I would really struggle with that. Think how can I be tarred with a reputation of wines that are entry level and really not very good and sort of sold below cost. I'm making something that's artisanal and real, but still good value. So they have a lot of issues to sort out, but sparkling wine is more and more incredibly popular, and people drink it more as an everyday thing rather than just for special occasions. So I think they will get there, but they'll be a bit bumpy along the road. That's my view. Yeah,
the opportunity is certainly there, I think. I mean, Gerard, what's your thoughts on sparkling from Spain?
Some of again, I could completely echo Mike's points on that. We don't do a great deal we only have a couple of Cava at sort of fighting stroke entry point. But what we have seen, interestingly, it was something on the back of the single vineyard wines. One of our Rioja suppliers who make an absolutely outstanding barrel-aged Viura and have done for 20 years or more from a single vineyard, Finca Alta Cantabrica. They last year or launched I'm not even sure technically, forgive my ignorance on this, whether it is a Cava or whether it's Rioja Espumoso. I think it might be the latter, but it's and it's not cheap by any means, but it's really good. I mean, that's the thing. There are some absolute knockout sparkling wines being made in Spain. I think one of the difficulties they have, unlike with the still wines where they are almost market leaders within certain styles, there's nowhere else in the world makes Tempranillo, and certainly makes it in the Spanish styles and in volume. So they're absolutely beyond first among equals in that. In sparkling wine, it's trickier. There is a lot more competition. There is a lot more well-known competition. It's hard to look beyond champagne. And as Mike then said, even though English sparkling wine has opened the door to maybe more experimentation, getting beyond the champagne style is, for consumers in terms of taste, maybe a tricky one. But there are some absolutely tremendous sparkling wines being made in Spain. Difficulty is the volume. I've spoken about niche wines in the past, earlier in this round table. I think some of the high-end Spanish sparkling wines will remain niche. It will be that combination of price, availability, and the fact that they're always going to be playing second or third fiddle to better known styles from elsewhere in the world. Okay. But that's not to knock them at all. And I think, funnily enough, the domestic market will soak up, will take most of that volume anyway. If you look at the fine dining scenes in the many large Spanish regional cities, they will probably be the first market for that style, not quite so much export.
Bastian, can I ask you, I mean, is Cava making a resurgence for you? So your audio.
Yeah, we've this year was our record year for Cava in terms of volumes. I think it offers that value for money aspect, which is one of the best, I think, for sparkling wine. And obviously different styles, from entry to more premium. But yeah, no, it works really well for us. I wanted to talk about another region as well, which we do a bit of work with, but we haven't talked about, if that's okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the islands, and specifically like the Balearic Islands as well, because I think for me as a wine enthusiast from Spain, it's probably some of the most interesting wines that's coming out of Spain right now. Before that, I think with Spain, it's almost like we all got that emotional connection with it. We all been on holiday in Spain at some point. We've all had the food and the tapas and the culture, and I think there's that has got it going for it, which maybe other wine countries hasn't got it. But I was lucky enough to live in Mallorca for a couple of years, and I've tried some wines there which you cannot find anywhere else. I mean, the grape variety to start, some of the indigenous grapes that they got on the island you can't find anywhere else in the world, I think.
Interesting.
And absolutely beautiful reds, with Montenegro and Cayet and even white wines and the islands. Obviously, we talked about the size of the vineyards, pretty small, hard to and hard to sell, but it's almost like we need to show these wines, to show that these wines are available rather than just your Rioja and Ribera del Duero. So
I did ask before we started the panel whether or not, for you to pick out a wine from your range that you Are you going to pick out a wine from the Balearics, or have you got another wine that you picked out?
Well, I picked two actually. I got one from the Balearics,
Are you? Okay, good.
which is this one, which is quite an experimental wine. It's brand new. It hasn't really got a name on it. It's from a small producer, which is based in Santa Magdalena, which is north of the island, and they've got some old vines as well. So coming back to old vines of Montenegro, Cayet, and Syrah, as it happens, and it's very, very small producer, and they make all natural, so natural fermentation, no filtration. It hasn't got a wax top on it, but I'm sure it will have at some point. And the other one I picked, which I think summarize Spain as well quite well, is a Verdero from Rueda, which is the opposite end of the spectrum with what it delivers, from Marqués de Cáceres. So we're talking about a big producer, very regimented, more technological wine in a way, still using, experimenting with winemaking techniques like concrete eggs and to try to give the extra flavors. But I think these two represented quite well what you can get from Spain at the moment. This, romantic, small producer, very interesting, indigenous grapes. But then, the big producer, which are, also producing some clean, easy drinking.
That's great. Yeah, good. Really
some
good.
wines.
Yeah, nice examples. Thank you. Noel, can I ask you, what have you picked out from your range to illustrate what Spain can do better than anybody else?
Well, I think that's tricky, better than anybody else.
Not anybody else, but yeah.
I think I've just picked something that I think that I really like, and it's unsurprisingly from Valencia. I don't know if you can see that. It is from Cella del Rure. It's a wine called Parate. It's totally biodynamic, organic, and sustainable, so ticks all those boxes. It's made from indigenous vines. These are vines that have become that people forgot about. And we talk a lot about old vines, and old vines are good in many respects, but a lot of the vineyards planted in Spain were planted for volume. And so they're planted on valley floors, and whilst they're old, they produce pretty pedestrian fruit. But we love the term old vines. I'm finding a lot of people are replanting forgotten vineyard areas that used to be vineyards that maybe have now become sort of bushland, scrubland, and they're replanting terraces and planting them with the varieties, the original varieties that used to be there and used to make the region popular in its day. And so there's quite a lot of actually young vine material around in lots of parts of Spain that I think is really quite exciting as well. I know it's not as easy to market, but I mean, I was just in Valencia last week, and I went to see a very well-known producer there, and who's literally done that. And he showed me some wines made from 2- and 3-year-old vines, and they're quite incredible.
It's great that you can then tell that story to your customers as well. It's quite a good study. How much do you sell that for then?
Well, that's not actually available yet, but this one here is not actually that one. This is from Cella del Rure, who are probably the flag bearers of Valencian quality wine. And this is a wine that they also is made from local varieties Arcos and Mando, about 2/3, 1/3. It's aged entirely in large clay amphora underground, all wild yeasts, and it's only 12.5% alcohol. And sees no oak at all, so it goes against totally what was famous for in the region. Really, Valencia was all about big, sturdy reds aged in oak, often shipped to other regions to help bulk up the production elsewhere. So it's very much the style that's coming out of Valencia that I find really interesting. So that very much what we were saying at the start of the of this roundtable discussion, something that's quite modern, that's quite bright, that's quite crunchy, that you can serve slightly chilled and goes with a huge different range of tapas. And so for me, I really like this style because it goes against what people think about Spain. I think most people still think of Spain. Most people are going to think Rioja, big, oaky, bang. And we all know we're way beyond that. But the average consumer, that's still what they probably think. And so that, I think, can take them well away from that.
Brilliant. Excellent. Gerard, can I ask you, what have you picked out?
Yeah, it's a really hard choice. I mean, which of your children do you like best, sort of thing. But I was tempted with Rufete from Sierra de Salamanca. We do one from there, which is like a slightly gruff Beaujolais, if you like, that I was really going to go for that. But hand on heart, the one that I've been drinking most at home, and sadly, I thought I had one left in the cellar, and rather dopely, I don't. So I can't wave a bottle.
It's so good you drank it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the last one went over Christmas. I need to restock, but I don't know if you can see that on the.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Las Violetas Garnacha from the Sobreros co-op, made by Soto Manrique. Chuchi Soto, who his family have been involved in Rueda winemaking for generations. I think he was involved in the Jacques Lurton project that helped put Verdeco and Rueda on the map 20 years ago. And he's been working for the last 10 years, possibly a little longer, in the Grados Mountains, and working with the Sobreros co-op. He's got a really interesting range of Garnacha Reds and Albillo white, where he's got an orange Albillo Royale, so with skin contact. We do an Albillo, it's amazing. It's sort of weirdly sourdough bread flavored, which is way better than it tastes better than it sounds. That is working very well for us. That is more sur-lie than skin contact. But as I mentioned earlier, it's the reds, the best value Pinot Noir in Europe, if you like that sort of thing. This is from, I think, vineyards at around about 1,000 meters, very granitic soils, old vines, and it just makes something that is terroir-driven, floral, juicy, delicious. It's fermented in the combination of, there's a little bit of amphora. I've seen fiberglass tanks, old concrete, and a proportion of the wine goes into old barrels. So that's third or fourth fill, just for a little bit of age and texture. And the resulting wine is something that's bright, fresh, ages beautifully, and is a rather like Pinot Noir, is a match for so many different styles of food. It's a real all-rounder. So those are the kind of styles. It's an invidious choice, you know, which are your favorite sort of Spanish wines. Ask me tomorrow, I could have said a Priorat, or next week it might be a Rioja style, but for the moment it's Sobreros co-op, Las Violetas.
Well, if it tastes as well as you talk about it, it's well worth checking out.
Available at Berkman, 1650 on the trade list.
You should be working your PR team, Chief. So, Mike, I mean, I guess you haven't brought your bottle with you to Barcelona, have you? Or have you? Well done, good man.
I went to the stand and said, can I grab a bottle of this? I need to take it with me. So this winery is here today. So yeah, this is quite an important wine for me as well, because it's actually sort of the first wine that I ever signed on the dotted line, so to speak. So there's a sort of sentimental value to that. So it's a Ribera del Duero from a winery called Ripadori. And what this represents to me and to Boutinot, I think, is I feel like my job, Boutinot's job in the trade, is to present mainstream wines generally that are really great value. And that's the core of what I think about what I'm supposed to do most of the time. So I love playing around with, you know, fun, quirky wines and things like that. But ultimately, I know that what I think the customers come for, and so trying to offer these wines that in an indie can be under £15, but really punch above their weight, things that you'd probably be happy to pay £20 for, or people would do, and that they're cheaper than that. So this is £12.49, which I think is amazing for what I would describe as a real wine. It's not just a simple fruity wine. It's got some concentration, some complexity. It's got typicity of Ribera del Duero, that it's quite dark. It's got some structure, but it's also got an elegance to it as well. So that's what we're really looking for, this kind of sense of drinkability And I have struggled quite a lot with Ribera del Duero to find more slightly elegant styles of wine whilst maintaining what they actually are, which is big, powerful, full-bodied wines, which is absolutely fine to be full-bodied, powerful wine, but need to have a sense of elegance. And that often I would find that maybe the first wine that you try, the Hoven wines or the Roble, can be really approachable and good. But as you moved up through Crianza and into the higher tiers, that they just became more oaky, more extracted, more powerful. And what Ripadori does really well is they just let the vineyards do the work, really, in the sense that it's not necessarily more tannic or more powerful. It's more concentrated in length, more complex of flavor. But I wouldn't say that then, that as you get higher up the scale, they get more tannic or sort of incredibly powerful. So yeah, that's my choice, and one that I think hopefully it's had a good start, one that will help Ribera del Duero to continue to grow in the indies and off trade and indies and on trade in the UK.
That's great, and it's great if it's the first one you got in through the door for Booston as well. It's brilliant. Carlos, I mean, I'm not sure if you have you picked out the wine from your range that you can talk about, or
I picked the wine from our winery from Portia, but as it happens with Gerard, I thought I had a bottle in the basement, but on Saturday night I found out that my wife decided to give that bottle to a true friend. So I was a little bit annoyed because I decided to pick. Sorry, let me.
That's right. That's fine. We can see you. Go back a bit.
Yeah, no, but I think just give me 1 second because I need to take out the. No.
Okay.
Portia Suma. This is Ribera del Duero Tempranillo. It's our top wine in Portia. It's a 102 years old vineyard. It was in 1920. So as Mike was saying, the first moment I was thinking about bringing some Roble or Crianza, because Roble and Crianza in Ribera del Duero, it's the 90% of the sales of the DO, the category Roble and Crianza. But then I decided to bring something different. Of course, this is a non-everyday wine, but this is a Tinto Fino grape. We produce less than 3,000 bottles per year, and not every year, because it's produced well on excellent vintages. And the special thing that has this wine is that we make the integral vinification in 400 liters barrel with non-toast. So as soon we bring the grapes from the vineyards, we place them in the 400 liters non-toast French oak. Then we keep it there for around 10 months, making racking every 2 hours on the first 10 days, and after that twice per day. And after that we decide to put the wines for around 7 months in French new oak, 225 liters. So we make a strong, powerful, and full-bodied wine, of course, because it's a meaty wine, but we also add some elegance, some silky notes that make this wine very special. And of course, it's like 2,800 bottles more or less per year, depending on the vintage.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Actually, we haven't done that before in a tasting, because normally we're so busy tasting a selection of wines. It's actually quite nice to have us all to play our own game. Actually, I personally haven't played, so I haven't actually got a wine there I can pick out. But I'd just like to think it's a nice way to bring this debate to a close, actually, to actually get your own personal recommendation from what is working well for your range, but also what you think of Spain as well. So thanks everybody for your time. Thanks Carlos for joining us from Spain, and Mike from Barcelona, and
thank you very much.
So everybody else for being here. So as I say, we'll be pushing the recording out, I think, on February 27th. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.